Good morning. Good morning. I'm not going to be on here very long. So I want to make sure I maximize this time with everyone as I get myself live. I know that it's almost quitting time on the live, but I wanted to make sure I came on. It's been kind of a jam-packed day. Yesterday we had what is called Revenue Day, where any bill that has something to do with money or things like that needed to be done, needed to be adjudicated, as they would say, by yesterday. Just as it for informational poor purposes for you all, I have a week left. Good morning. Good morning, Daniel, Ryan. Good morning, Spirit One. I have a week left. So next Friday, no, that's a fib. Next Saturday will be our last day up here in Richmond, and I'm hoping that we are able to get everything done. Vote for the Bay. I see you. Hold on, look at this. I see you. Vote for the Bay. Got you. I know. Aye, Captain. I'll say that. But I definitely am interested in what you all have. What do you have going on? What is a priority for you? What's going on in district? Sometimes I lose sight of that. I recognize, I'll tell you, being here, I recognize that I am in a bubble and there are so many things happening. I get up and I listen to the Breakfast Club in the morning, and the time that I get up, they do the news, right? I get to hear some bits and pieces of the news, and I don't get to scroll on social media much, but I do catch headlines and people say things, and I know it feels wild. It feels incredibly bizarre, but also very, very real and scary. And my spouse and I were talking yesterday, and he was telling me some of the new stipulations that they have on federal employment. So, from those of you who don't know, I think I may have said that my spouse is an air traffic controller. And he was saying for federal employees, there's these new stipulations that if they don't do X, Y, or Z, they can be terminated. It's pretty significant. So to those of you all that are employed still by the federal government that chose to say or were considered essential, please know that at the state level, our leadership has started what's called an emergency committee for federal employees to start looking at what are we going to do at the state level. I can also tell you I have a big brain on my team where we went to one of the budgetary departments for the state and asked how many programs in the Commonwealth of Virginia are subject to or predicated on federal dollars. And there's about 230 some odd programs. And the person that's leading that commission, we've got a chance to sit and just talk to him and pick his brain about what are the things that are in place in the event that we do stop receiving federal funds as a state, right? That we do just for programmatically, maybe that, I think that what's happening with the Department of Education will be a rippling effect. And I'm going to go back to that. I do want to touch back on that. But what does happen and what I do know right now is if certain things happen, just like during COVID, where everything sort of shut down, there are things in place that are within our budget that would mean that I would have to come back to Richmond and we would have to work to figure out in tandem with our co-equal branch of the government, the executive branch, we would have to figure out how we did certain things. So right now, we are also in the midst of working out our budget. So the legislative branch, if you don't know, the legislative branch makes their budget. So the House makes a budget, the Senate makes a budget. We come together, right? We come together to sort of make sure our budgets are the same. So we're going to be in budget negotiations for the next week. I think we'll be able to work it out. And then we submit our budget. All of our budgets and our bills will go to the governor, who will have until I think it's 7 Wednesdays or something like that. It's what we call reconvene. I have to look at the code, but it's a certain amount of Wednesdays. Reconvene is where we come back and we take a look at all the actions and changes that the governor has made to all of our bills, right? Because the governor has that right. We're co-equal branches of the government. What I will say, backtracking, and so that will happen. So just know that from what I know right now, in the event that something happens, there was legislation and we're still looking for it. Yesterday was such a varsity day that I didn't see my office but once. I was like, when I came in and came into my office, it was dark, it was night. And I was like, wow, I haven't been here all day. But I'm going to get with my team today so that we can talk about what is that language that was made. Was it a bill or is it language inside of the Virginia budget, right? Because our budget's that big old pack is, actually, let me show you something. Just one second. All right. So usually our bills are really small. Like my bill is like a one-liner, or 2 lines, or the longest bill that I've seen of new code, because unlike the federal government, we can't stack a whole bunch of stuff inside of a bill. Like you can't put something that has to do with environment and education unless it's education and environment, or something that has to do with education and food tax, right? Like it just, unless those two things go together, we can't stack our bills. We can only, we can only open up one part of the code section at a time. But at the federal level, they just have these huge, we call them omnibuses, bills with all kinds of just stuff from different topics. And it's just a whole thing. But the biggest bill that I get to see is the budget bill. And this is what the budget bill looks like, right? Let's show this, right? So this is our budget bill, at least for the House side, right? And it has, this is everything. And I keep these just in case anybody ever wants to put their hands on the budget. So this is not our budget. This is the governor. So when I come into the General Assembly, 9 times out of 10, the governor has worked through his respective budget, and we're going to have to gel things up. That's it. So once the legislative side does the gelling, we'll go we have people assigned to do that. That's like their whole job. But because this is an even year, like I think I've explained this a couple of times, we're only doing amendments. So we have a 2-year budget. Our budget's good for 2 years, and then we make a new one. And even years, we make new one. Odd years, we make changes. And so this is just the changes that were made to our biennium budget. And this is what we're going to be negotiating. I got some stuff in here. I was really excited to get things in the budget for some organizations, as long as it makes it through. Oh, Nathan Sims, thank you so much. I try to advocate for what I'm asked to advocate for, what I know about, what I don't know about, what I'm trying to understand. So thank you for being a community member that can, tap in and let me know the things that the way I should be advocating, or the things I should know, because this is, we're doing this work together. We're doing it together. So back to the Department of Education. I know that's a big deal for a lot of people. I've heard a lot of conversations about, what happens if they dismantle the Department of Education, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So what I need everyone to understand is that you and I, we already have some level of control of what goes into the curriculum. Right? Curriculum, instruction, all that stuff, that is controlled at the state and local level. That's not something that there can be a national push for some things. If you remember before the previous presidency, when they were talking about book bans and all these different things, you could see locality by locality, right? City by city, town by town, county by county was doing things differently. So you may have been in a county that that book ban, that history change, all that stuff was not even a thing. Or you could have been in one where it was like a hot button topic. that happens locally. So just remember, that's the kind of control, that's the kind of influence that you could have locally. When it comes to the Department of Education level, at the federal level, because remember, Virginia has a Department of Education, the federal level guides our civil rights, right? So when we think about people with disabilities, Title IX with women, the treatment of, non-white students, or students, like, again, students with IEPs, like all these sorts of things, those things have federal governance, right? That when we talk about the civil rights of students within the education system, that is a huge deal. And that's where I think, because of what we've seen happening across the legislative, federal legislative and executive branch, that's where I think we're going to see a lot of the shifts in how do we fund schools that are may have higher needs, right? How do we benchmark that? How do we marrying that up? And I believe the number in talking to, because as I said, I'm very curious about how we are being proactive, even if I'm not in the rooms of where it's happening. I want to be able to communicate to you all what's happening. Part of a larger part, and I feel I'm trying to get it back in my brain. I don't want to misspeak about the share of funding for certain departments. There's certain areas where we get a whole lot of federal funding, and there's certain areas where we don't get so much federal funding that as a state we might be able to fill in that gap. We are working with a surplus right now, knowing that. I think the biggest thing that I'm in my front of my mind of how to manage expectations is because your school boards, your city councils, they're going to build their budgets off of our budgets. And if you know this, so if you're in a locality right now, like wherever you live, you're going to start hearing probably in March your city and your school board saying that they're going to do a budget presentation, because they sort of look to what the state is doing, right? We're Dillon rule. They look at what the state is going to provide, and then they develop their budget based off of what the state could or could not give. So the city of Norfolk asked the state to, what I think Delegate Hernandez-Carey asked the state for 50, 60 million. I can't remember the number for seawall. That money did not make it into our budget. That money, it didn't make it into the state budget. They asked for it, but the state, it's not in the House budget, at least. And I'm not sure. I'm have to look and see if it's in the Senate budget. But if it's in the House budget and not in the Senate budget, they'll work it out. If it's not in either, then Norfolk's probably not going to get that money. And they've got to sort of build out how their budget is going to look. That's fair, right? So I say that from a place of, just because you're not hearing things, right? And I'm being very gentle with the things that I'm saying, because I don't want to put anybody into a panic, anybody. But I do know that some departments are already looking at what it looks like, 15, 10, 5% cuts, if those sorts of things happen. And there'll be people who are protected and there'll be people who are not. But it's also important to understand that we've been through something comparable like this, right? The United States went through a recession, right? That was really, really hard, right? We went through COVID. That was really, really hard. So know that there are people much smarter than I am on funding and understanding these things. But I will be the curious cat and ask the question that are already processing these things and sort of walking us towards the if then. So if this happens, then this. If this happens, then this. But I can guarantee you that should something catastrophic happen, which would significantly change the way that our budget looks or how we allocate funds, there's already, and when I find it, I'll make sure I share that will trigger us, the legislative branch, having to come back up to Richmond to do work. But will it happen? I don't know. I can't say for sure, but those things are being processed. Good morning, Virginia Justice Alliance. Good morning. I think the last thing that I want to tap into is, and if you have questions or comments, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat. I'm probably going to stay on for about 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to get moving. I got a bill to present today. But yesterday, this I love. I'll share some good news. At least I feel like it's good news. So since I joined the General Assembly, I think my first, no, maybe not my first year, maybe it was the second year when I was able to actually put my own bills in. I keep putting in this bill that says that we shouldn't be lying to minors in interrogations, right? Whether it's a custodial interrogation or non-custodial interrogation. And the difference is if the minor was read their Miranda rights or not. There was a study, I think, done by UVA. I want to say it was the UVA Law Center that said that 90% of youth waive their rights, waive their rights to, and I'm just like, oh, what? And then in the digital age where there's just so many different ways that you can trip people up, our thought process, and my thought process is you should be able to say, hey, we got DNA and we're going to figure out who it is to a child. You should not be able to say, I got your DNA and I'm going to prove it was you, right? That children need different protections. They have a high level of false confessions. It's stupid. It's stupid dumb how because they're kids, right? And I think we've run this line of saying, well, a 17-year-old, that's not a kid, okay, and while also saying, I guess I think back to, side note, I think back to like when the Olympics was happening, maybe it was 2000 or before that, when I can't think of the swimmer's name, but he went and they were all acting up, being crazy, and they were like, he's just a kid, and he's like a 27, 25-year-old guy. Like, no, you can't, no, we're not doing that. But at any rate, so the bill made it through the House, and it was in the Senate last night. That was my last bill that I had to do last night. And one of the senators, actually, his name was Senator Deeds, when they asked, does anybody want to speak in favor or in opposition? And so the woman came up to speak in opposition for I think it was for the Commonwealth Attorneys Association. And before she could say anything, Senator Deeds says, so tell me why it's a good idea to lie to kids. I said, yes, tell him why. And so she goes into her spiel and she's talking about it. And she accidentally says, I don't think it's a bad idea to lie to kids. I just think blah, 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 blah. And it was a mistake. She did not mean to say that. But I think she realized it a little bit into the speech. And I was just like, Freudian slip. I'll try to get that run that tape and post it. But that bill passed the Senate. And we are just a little bit step closer. We won't be the first state to do it, just a step closer to saying that, we're not going to tell young people to trust the police while also not telling them that the police can lie to them. So we can negate one of those things by saying you can't lie about material facts, right? You should not be able to do that. Okay, so and I'm excited about that bill. So freaking excited. Been working on this for years. I want it. Okay, so Nate Sims over here says, we look forward to gearing up for a major discussion around housing. NRHA welcomes a seat at the table. Yes, let's do it. Hey, let's do it. Just you tell me when, and my ears, eyes, and heart will always be open for sure. So NRHA is the Norfolk Redevelopment Housing Authority. So all of our public housing, they own y'all own a lot of different properties though. So like it's work, right? And we've got to be in the business of protecting those and advocating for those that may not have the time, opportunity, or even know to show up. Like that's fair. You just got to do the work. So I'm asking y'all too, if there's something that you believe in, right? Like that you find important. I might not even know nothing about it. I might not even, I heard a bill and I gotta go, but I'm just say this. So people advocate for all different things. I heard a bill yesterday that was about the hybridization of animals. This I didn't know. Listen to this. So they were talking about how sometimes they take animals. This is a bill, like a law to say that we're going to stop the hybridization of animals. Meaning, have you ever heard of a liger? Y'all ever heard of a liger, like a lion and a tiger made and make a that and the letter of support that I got, or the letter saying, hey, you need to support this bill. We shouldn't take animals away from their moms so soon, and that we shouldn't be hybridization. Because I guess there's a thing where people put zebras and donkeys together and things happen. And it's like something that I would not know anything about. But I got lobbied on it. I had a member that was like, hey, this bill do this. I had folks come to the office, give me, so like when I say there is something out there for everyone, there's no issue too big or too small. I mean it, because I have seen lots of different things. I have heard lots of different bills where I'm just like, wow, okay, all right, here we go. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to get off to the day. I have a bill to present this morning. I'm not sure which one. I think I have 4 more bills, 3 or 4 more bills to present. But even once I get my bills out, because we're a crossover. So once my bill goes out of the Senate, out of the House, I'm in the Senate. So I'm presenting to senators. It still has to go to the executive branch. Some of them I'm expecting to get vetoed. I hate to say that. You kind of know like where your values and the governor's don't align. So he's probably going to veto them. But I'm hoping to get some things through, hoping to get this money for some of these community orgs that we got and are able to do great things. My ask of you on this beautiful Thursday is that, remember, do not let the noise drown you out of your activism. And I'm not even saying just your activism, your due. There are so many, this is a concerted campaign to inundate you with so much information that you feel frozen. That is part of the plan. I'm saying that because I've been reading. I have not finished reading Project 2025. And I'm going to tell you, it's not even called Project 2025. Think about this. It is called the Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. It's called a mandate for leadership. And when you, in the grand scheme of things, you look at what's happening, they got their leadership together and they're executing. And I know y'all expect the same for us. And so that's where we need to be, is we should have our own mandate for leadership from our politicians, from our appointed, like all different levels. We should have a mandate for leadership as well, where we don't do harm, because what we see is intentional harm. So my ask for you is just to remember this stifling of you is all a part of the plan. And you do not have to participate in being stuck. So, yep, that happened in the first term. So I'm grateful for all of you for being here. I will see you next Thursday. If you haven't, I'm trying to keep the stories up so you guys get a play-by-play. If you're interested in something, please don't hesitate to call your friend. Let me say this real quick. That book, that Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Project, aka Project 2025, it has chunks of sections. So I started reading the veteran section, the education section, and as a reminder, I think I may have said this last week, that we are in phase 4 of what if you want to know what's happening, if you want to know what's going to happen next so you're not caught off guard, look at the 180 day plan. That's where we're at. Phase 4 of the Mandate for Leadership, phase 4, and it's a play-by-play. You won't be shocked. You'll actually maybe start thinking about how we can support each other with doing better. Is that fair? I think that's fair. All right. Thank you so much. Many blessings for your week too. Hey, Mr. Little, I appreciate you. Until then, I will catch y'all on these stories. I will catch y'all in the feed and maybe in these streets. All right. Be well.